So, obviously with the new fights, we got to make some predictions. So we're going to run through, we'll kind of break down these different fighters again for these couple of fights here. We'll add the other stuff for the other guys so you guys aren't confused and we're not just listening off one person's information.
Yeah.
So the first fight is Jamal Pretty Boy Emmers versus the Anomaly Vincent Cachero at 145 pounds. Jamal Emmers, he's the American. He's 17-5. He's 31 years old. He's 5 feet 10 inches tall. He's 0-2 inside of the UFC. That's including his knockout loss to Julian Erosa on the Contender Series. And then he lost a super close split decision to Giga Chikadze. So that's his UFC career right there. I thought he won that fight personally. And then he is fighting the Anomaly Vincent Cachero. Vincent Cachero is 7-2. He's an American. He's 30 years old, and he's 5 feet 6 inches tall. And as a very, very last-minute replacement, he's making his UFC debut. Tell me what you think about these fights.
Yeah, man. So one thing I do want to say, hey, go check out our other video. We got some breakdowns. We're leaving them up. I mean, The information's still there. They're valuable videos, if you want to kind of go back and see people's opinions on these other fighters, But, just to add on to that, Jamal Emmers does have a couple good wins outside the UFC as well.
Mm-hmm.
He beat Corey Sandhagen, who's in the UFC right now.
That was in 2017, so it wasn't too long ago.
Yeah, not that long ago either. And he beat Alexander Hernandez, and that was a little bit earlier in his career. But so he does have a couple of those, and I think Emmers he's a good wrestler, man, and he's got some solid striking for a wrestler.
Yeah.
So
like we talked
crazy
about last time, he has 7 knockouts. He's got 7 decisions, and he has 3 submissions. He is a state champion wrestler, and he wrestled a little bit at Waldorf College as well. But he's also a brown belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So, he's another well-rounded guy. His striking is fun to watch. But he's going against Vincent Cachero, who is also experienced and also has a win against the UFC vet, and Nolan Hernandez. So he beat Nolan Hernandez by decision. Right now, he doesn't have the amount of fights, obviously, as Emmers, but he's 7-2 with 3 decision wins, 2 knockouts, and 2 submission wins. So, in his fights, he's shown that he can fight everywhere.
Yeah.
What do you think who do you think is going to end up winning this fight right here?
Well, ultimately, I had to go and watch. I watched about 4 Cachero's fights this morning. I watched some of his amateur fights, watched a couple of his pro fights. And, what I saw is that Cachero is a boxer.
Yes.
He has very good hands.
Yes.
And like you touched on, he looked like he can hang just about everywhere. But the majority of his fights, he was able to keep them standing. And he showed he's got really good power.
Yeah.
In that fight versus Nolan Hernandez, he dropped him 4 times in the first round.
Yeah.
In the first round.
Yeah.
That's like a 10-7 if you ask me.
That's a definite 10-7.
You got to give him something on that.
That's a definite 10-7. If that was boxing, oftentimes in these boxing fights, they stop. It's an automatic 3 knockdown, you're done.
Yeah. He knocked him down 4 times in that first round against Nolan Hernandez. He's got a really solid chin, even though he did get knocked out once. He's been knocked out once, but it was by a knee that probably would have knocked out just about anybody else too.
Yeah. Knees can put some people out cold.
Yeah. Casey Kenny got him coming in, so he was throwing a punch and he kind of ducked down to throw a looping punch, and Kenny got a tie clinch on the back of his head and just drove his left knee right into his face and stiffened him.
Yep.
It was beautiful. But other than that, the rest of his fights have all pretty much been brawls. He's down to stand and trade with you. He'll take some hits.
Yep.
Showed like he's got a pretty good chin other than that. So, outside of that, it is a short notice fight. You're talking 24 hours just about, maybe a little bit longer. But,
well, yeah.
I've got, for me, I'm sticking with Emmers in this one. I originally had Valiev winning, but obviously he's out. So I'm switching up my pick here to Jamal Emmers to win via TKO in round 2.
Ooh! You know what? Hey, so I did the exact same thing. So in this fight, what I ended up thinking is, it's going to be a striking match.
Yep.
Emmers has the ability to take it down if he wants to, and I think you might see some of that in the first round. I think you honestly might see him try to wear Cachero out. Cachero's on a short notice fight. He doesn't have a full camp in front of him or anything like that. So I don't think that he's going to have the cardio to go as long and do a full 15-minute fight.
Nope.
And what I think is going to happen is Jamal Emmers is going to make him heavy. And Jamal Emmers is going to make him carry the weight so that he tires out fast. But Jamal Emmers is also going to mix in that great striking he has. And you're going to see a combination of the wrestling and the striking from the very beginning. A little bit more heavy on the wrestling in the first round, I think. But then in the second round, once he tires him out a little bit, Jamal Emmers is going to use that good knockout power he has. And he's really going to start letting those hands fly. And I think that Cachero's just going to be too tired. And Emmers is going to clip him and put him out.
Yeah, man. So that's another fight that we already agreed on that fight last time. So
yep.
We're sticking with the agreement here.
Yeah. So then we move on to Nathan Maness versus Jonathan Munoz Jr. at 145 pounds. So Nathan Maness, his name is Joseph Nathan Maness. So you'll find him as a couple of different things. And it does make it a little bit harder to find some footage on him. The second time around, I was actually able to find a lot more footage than I was able to the first time.
I think a lot of people were researching him, so it kind of pulled a
It-
lot of stuff
it
to
was,
the top.
It was a lot easier to find research this time than for the first video. But, you know, we talked about him before. We're going to do it again real quick. He's an American. He's 11-1. He's 29 years old. He's 5 feet 10 inches tall. He's also making his UFC debut, but he did have this fight scheduled earlier, so he does have more time to be prepared for this fight. He's got 5 decision wins. He has 4 knockouts, and he has 2 submissions. He's also the former Bluegrass Brawls bantamweight champion. He's the former Warrior FC lightweight champion. He's the former TKO bantamweight champion and the former HR MMA featherweight champion. So he's fought as high as 155 pounds and won championships, and he's won championships down to 135 pounds and at 145. So he's going to be the bigger fighter, I feel like. Although, looking at the weigh-ins, he didn't look like he was honestly that much bigger. So then he's going against Johnny Munoz Jr., who's an American. He's 10-0. He's 27 years old. He's 5 feet 9 inches tall, and he's making his UFC debut. He has 6 submission wins. He's got 2 knockout wins, and he has 2 decision wins. Another interesting thing about him, all of his pro fights prior to this have been in King of the Cage.
Yep, his amateur fights were all King of the Cage as well.
Yeah, even his amateur fights. And he was the former 135-pound pro champion for King of the Cage at one point. He's been training jiu-jitsu his whole life. His dad was a Brazilian jiu-jitsu black belt, and he is now a Brazilian jiu-jitsu black belt himself. What do you think about these guys?
Yeah, so, well, ultimately, I got to do it here. This is the Can Crusher alert. Can Crusher alert. You look at his record. Yes, he's been in King of the Cage for, 13 total fights. 3 of those were amateur, 10 pros, undefeated in all of them. But when you look at his record, man, he fought a lot of dudes with losing records at the time that they fought, or dudes that had only had a handful of fights at the time they fought. So this is my Can Crusher alert. For me, Johnny Munoz, you look at him, he is 10-0.
Yes.
Professionally. He's won all of his fights, including his amateur fights. But if you look at his records, the guys he's fought have not been very experienced either. Mm-hmm. Granted, when you first start out, you're 1-0, 0-0 starting out, I expect you to fight guys with similar records. But once you're 8-0, 9-0, 10-0, I feel like you should be fighting guys that are at least, with a winning record to the point, with, similar, 7-1 maybe, something stupid, 7-2 even.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, I agree with that. You need to, but it's like we've talked about in the past.
Yeah.
Just because you might be a can crusher or you've fought a lot of cans
doesn't mean you don't have
that
skills.
you don't have skills.
But and so
Munoz,
he does have the jiu-jitsu. Mm-hmm. We look at him. He trains out of Sequence Jiu-Jitsu in Norco, California. And like we said, he is 10-0.
Yeah.
The interesting thing about him is, do you remember the guy for King of the Cage who was offered a short notice UFC fight, but the King of the Cage would not let him fight?
Yeah.
That's Johnny Munoz.
Yes, it is.
He was offered a short notice fight against Marlon Vera back in 2019.
Yep.
And King of the Cage would not release him from his contract, so that was kind of a shitty deal for him. Because, I mean, you're a regional promotion, essentially. You should be letting these guys get their shot.
Well,
they took a lot of heat for it, too.
Ultimately, that's what those smaller shows, let's be honest,
They're
King of the Cage
shows.
is a smaller show. It might have been around for a long time. And they use the fact that they've sent a lot of guys onto the UFC as a marketing tool. They literally do. They play the videos of guys like Uriah Faber and other guys that have fought in the UFC. They play their clips in the beginning of their pay-per-views. On the beginning of their fight cards, if you watch it, they always show those clips of those guys who have made it to the UFC. So they're very well aware of what their promotion is doing as far as feeding guys up. So it was kind of garbage thing for King of the Cage to say, hey, we're going to keep you here, even though we know that your ultimate goal is to move beyond us.
Yeah. I mean,
especially for a guy who's fought all of his fights there.
Yeah, it was a pretty bad deal, but he's getting his shot now, another late notice fight.
Yes.
So we're going to find out, but he's a pressure grappler, so he's kind of like, in a sense, I want to say, kind of Khabib-ish in the way that he's just going to come forward and try to grab you in a clinch and then get you down. That's essentially what he's going to be looking to do.
He's been working on his hands. He's been trying to get his hands better, but ultimately I don't think that that's his best tool. I definitely think that's going to be his weakness against Nathan Menez.
Oh, absolutely.
Nathan Menez has good hands, though. You know, he's got good, powerful hands. He does a good job of moving backwards and striking. So what I think that Munoz Jr. is going to have to look out for is when he starts pressuring in, Menez will step back, fire that right.
Yep.
And I think that Munoz is going to have to watch out for that. Ultimately, I don't think that Munoz is going to be able to get him down to the ground. I think that Menez has shown that he's very skilled and he's very capable of staying on the feet, and he's very capable of landing some shots. I think it's a step up for competition for Johnny Munoz. I know Menez is making his debut in the UFC as well, but I feel like overall he's fought the higher caliber of fighters, and I'm going with Menez by decision.
Yeah, so for me, this could be kind of a trap fight for Menez too.
Yeah.
He likes to wrestle sometimes.
And
he'll shoot in and he'll get in the clinch and he'll take you down, and we've seen that. And I'm not saying that's bad for him because we've seen wrestlers dominate jiu-jitsu guys before. Yeah. But we've also seen wrestlers make some mistakes and get tapped out by those jiu-jitsu guys.
Oh, yeah. So, a lot of times.
Yeah. So, I mean, that could be his downfall. I think if Menez is smart, they just go with a game plan to defensive wrestle, keep this thing standing, and keep it on the feet. And if that happens, I've got Menez winning by knockout in round 2.
Yeah, so you got a knockout, I got a decision. We both have Menez.
Yep.
So on the new fights, we both have the same fighter picked again. But ultimately with this fight with Menez and any of these really last minute fights, if they're anything within the last week or 2 weeks, it's really hard to get that game plan down in that amount of time.
Yeah.
So whatever they were working on is probably really what's going to stick out. Obviously, there's also that other saying that your game plan goes out the window once you get hit in the face.
That is true.
So the game plan might not matter. But what I have noticed myself personally, what I thought has made Fight Island so much more fun, and actually not even just Fight Island, but it's going to sound bad, the pandemic so much more fun. The thing that's made it so much more fun for fighting is these fighters, they haven't had camps to train for the opponent. And I think it's made more exciting fights.
Well, they're relying on pure skill at this point for the most part.
Yeah, I think they're relying on their own skills, their own techniques, the things that they've trained and they practice all the time versus game planning. I think you're seeing a lot less game planning and guys just relying, and girls just relying on their own skills and coming out and putting on great fights.
Yeah.
So I think it's been a good thing for us.
Yeah, it's been pretty sweet, man. I'm excited, though. But all right, Can Crushers, hey, this was our first post-weigh-in update show.
Yeah, it was good.
Let's get out of here.